Last summer, Manchester United spent big money bringing Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha into the club. Two Premier League proven players with the idea of injecting immediate quality into this Manchester United team. And I think it's fair to say that that has worked. They are currently the two top scorers at the club so far this season. It's fair to say these two are making a massive impact. Now, the first thing that I want to discuss with these two is something that I actually feel has gone under the radar a little bit. And that has been their extreme versatility, which has been on display for everyone to see so far this season. Manchester United have been operating with a much smaller squad this year because we are not in all of those other competitions, because last season was so bad. Only 21 players have played over 5 matches for United in the Premier League, so it's a much smaller squad, which means you need versatility, and these guys have offered it. Matheus Cunha has played left wing, he's played in the 10, he's played on the right wing, he's played up front, and we can see that in the statistics. Bryan Mbeumo has played right wing, which is sort of the initial plan when we signed him. He's played on the left wing, and recently under Michael Carrick he has played up front. Again, you can see that in the statistics, playing multiple positions. Before anything tactical or technical about the way that these two play, having players that can play in multiple zones and bring you top level performances is an absolute dream for a manager, because it means week by week you can tweak your idea while keeping the same philosophy, whilst keeping the same skill sets on the pitch, but you can just change where you are focusing these ideas. The other great thing is the impact that they can bring from the bench when they can come on and play literally any position. So I think this has been something which has gone under the radar, but I think it's really important. The other thing that's been really important with these two is the physicality, and this was something that Manchester United were really keen to bring to the club. If you cast your mind back to last season, Ruben Amorim and all of us as fans spent a lot of time complaining about the physicality, our inability to look after the ball. We couldn't really play out from the back at the time, so we would send the ball long, and it was going up to forwards and wingers who just couldn't look after the ball, didn't have a good enough first touch, physically couldn't sort of deal with the physical pressure that the opposition were putting on us. Bring Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo into the club, and that has immediately changed. I think Bryan Mbeumo against Arsenal was fantastic holding the ball up. I think he did some really good work holding off the likes of Saliba and Gabriel. They're not easy centre-backs to deal with. And then we've got Cunha, who we seem to notice, particularly late on in games against very big teams. Think back to Liverpool, but also the Arsenal game. But the fact that you can bring him on as a sub and he's got that physicality to literally drag us up the pitch. He's literally got opposition players like hanging off of the back of him, but he's still able to sort of shrug them off and carry the ball forward. That physicality has been huge for United. Individually, having those two as profiles has allowed United to play in a different way. It means we can play out from the back, we can play short, and you know, Cunha's got a good first touch, he's got good strength, so he can come towards the ball, he can look after the ball, he can protect it, he can bring others into the game, and Mbeumo can do something similar. He can come towards the ball, he can link up in midfield. We saw that against Manchester City. But in the next moment, if we need to, if we can't play out in the first phase, if the opposition are on top and we just want the ball away from our goal, now we can send the ball long. We saw Cunha against Liverpool earlier in the season was fantastic with the way that he dealt with these long balls. And again, Bryan Mbeumo up against Saliba and Gabriel, two of the best centre-backs in the league. He caused them a real problem. So simply just having these two profiles in the squad, having their abilities in the squad, has allowed United to sort of broaden our horizons in the way that we play. We can go short or we can go long. I'm just quickly going to take one moment to ask you guys if you could please subscribe to the channel, please. We're racing towards 95,000 subscribers and I need your help. Now that actually brings us really nicely onto our next point, which again is Manchester United trying to play in different ways. So playing the ball short and playing the ball long in the first phase. But then in the second phase, this was a big conversation that we had earlier in the week. I'll leave a link to the video because I think you'll enjoy it if you enjoy this one. But one of the big focuses that we were talking about was the importance of carrying different threats in the second phase, having different ways of moving through the opposition. Because for the past few seasons, we've seen so many teams lined up in a mid-block. Lots of players very close, very compact, and United have found it very difficult to move through them. Particularly under Ruben Amorim, this was a serious problem. What we've seen in the past 2 games is the ability, though, to play in different ways against these teams. So one of those ways is to go around the opposition. So, for example, you might play to the wide centre-back, who's then going to move the ball to the full-back, and you might go round the opposition's mid-block. Another thing that you could try and do, if you are brave enough, and if you have the right manipulation and skill sets and things like that in the middle, is you can play through the opposition's mid-block. You can try and knit up in these areas and move the ball through here, although it's very congested, very difficult. The other thing that you can do is play over. You can go over the opposition's block, and that's how you can race in behind. And Mbeumo and Cunha's skill set sort of personify all of this. Cast your mind back to the Manchester City game. It's Matheus Cunha going round Manchester City that creates the most important goal for Patrick Dorgu. If we then fast forward to the Arsenal game, it's Cunha in the middle of the pitch and United are able to go through. Of course, thanks to some fantastic midfield work, which we covered yesterday. But Cunha allowed United to go through Arsenal. And then, of course, also, we have seen Bryan and Mbeumo non-stop playing on the last line, racing in behind the opposition time and time again, allowing us to go over. These two are giving us different ways of playing against the opposition. Now, I do think there's going to be some really interesting challenges coming up. Cunha is likely to come into the team now that Patrick Dorgu is injured, and that will sort of change the approach that United have, but also I think the opposition will dictate that to an extent as well. We're likely to see a few more teams coming up where the opposition will be deeper, and for Mbeumo and Cunha, that's going to reduce the space that they have to work in, and that is going to hurt them a little bit because they are big space players. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they adjust to that challenge. In the first half of the season, particularly in the case of Cunha, it's probably something that he didn't do well enough. You know, he didn't play well enough against the smaller teams. I'm really interested and excited to see how that might change under Michael Carrick. And of course, you can't talk about these two without talking about the sheer quality that they bring, the sheer level that they bring to Manchester United. They are both in their prime years right now. They both know themselves as individuals. They know what they're good at. They know what they're bad at. They know how to use their body. They've got their techniques that they like to resort back to. And they're both fantastic players. They also have an incredible presence. We've seen that from the first day of the season. And you know, you can just answer this question for me. If you were the opposition and Manchester United were playing out from the back, let's say Lomans has got the ball, and, you know, Litcher and Maguire split, and the opposition, you go nice and high, you try and defend high up the pitch. Would you, as a manager, would you want to play man-to-man with these guys? Can you imagine sending your team man-to-man to try and press Manchester United? Now, I don't know about you, but I personally probably wouldn't, because we've spoken about the physical threat of Cunha and Mbeumo, of course, the pace, the different ways that they can play, but also just the ridiculous quality that they have. Cunha is such a strong individual with the way that he carries the ball, that leaving yourself 1 versus 1 against him is a dangerous, dangerous idea, especially if he's driving inside. And in the case of Mbeumo, he's not necessarily likely to beat a man in a 1 versus 1 dribble, because he doesn't need to. He's incredibly efficient. He just needs half a yard of space to kill you. Again, would you really want to be man-to-man with these guys? I wouldn't. And of course, the other thing that these two are doing is bringing us clutch moments in the past 2 games. Mbeumo and Cunha both scored important goals against Arsenal. Mbeumo got one against Manchester City. He's also scored against Spurs and Liverpool. They've been absolutely fantastic, and their finishing has been pretty good. We knew that when we signed them, we were signing players that could score phenomenal goals, but we were a little bit worried that their finishing level might dip, and perhaps it has a little bit, but not massively. They're still scoring good goals. Cunha this season has 5 goals from an XG of 5.1. So, you know, he's pretty much on track for what he should be doing. And I think he can get better at that in the second half of the season. And then Bryan Mbeumo has scored 8 goals from an XG of 6.52. So again, he's outperforming the numbers. And again, I think there's been a few chances which I would expect him to score, which he hasn't. So if these two can kick on even further in the second half of the season, they can be the difference makers. It's this sort of quality which can propel you into the Champions League spots, because they're game breakers. We saw it against Arsenal. It wasn't an easy game. It wasn't a game where United outplayed Arsenal as such. It was quite a close game. It was quite tight. It was quite scrappy for certain spells. What you need is some quality. Cunha provided that in abundance with a moment of magic. We call that game breaking. A player that can break the state of a game. It was a cagey game. It was locked, tight, 50-50, both teams going at it, but then having that player who can just switch it out of nowhere and provide just this insane moment. It's something that Arsenal, in fact, didn't have, but Manchester United do, and we have it in abundance. Bryan Mbeumo, Cunha, Ahmad, Bruno Fernandes. These are all players that can do something out of absolutely nothing, and that's why you pay the big money for them. Now, the great thing is that I actually think they can both do a little bit better. I think they've both had decent starts to life at Manchester United, especially Bryan Mbeumo. But I think they can do a lot more. I think they can get a lot better. I think Mbeumo can strike up an even better connection with the players around him. I think he can score more goals. I think he can get on the ball more. I think Cunha has more to offer. I think we can see more of his powerful drives at the heart of the opposition. We can see more of those long-range bangers, but also hopefully more of that interchanging and linking work. We've seen a bit more of it in the past couple of games. Hopefully we can see that more. And sort of just think about that for a second. I would argue we currently have one of the best attacking quadrants in the Premier League, and they're just going to keep getting better. You know, they're just going to keep improving. Amad's a young player, so he's going to improve. Cunha and Mbeumo are going to keep settling and understanding their new teammates more and more. Bruno Fernandes is Bruno Fernandes. You know, this is a seriously good front four, which in my opinion should have, or certainly the aim should be, to fire us into Champions League football next season. I think they've got the quality to do it. Now it's time for them to turn up, get the job done. I think they've been pretty good so far this season. They can go to the next level because they're seriously good players, and it's clear to see why we signed them. So long story short, I think Mbeumo and Cunha are both very good footballers. I think the price for both of them wasn't too bad. I think they are both great, but I think they can both do more, which is very, very exciting. But of course, a conversation for the future. For today's video, there is nothing left to talk about. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this one. And as always, I will see you in the next one.